All right. So this is the Trip.C worksheet webinar thing because I don't know what else to call it. So welcome to this digital event. So my name is David. You all know who I am that are attending this. For anybody that doesn't have a direct relationship with me already that's catching the replay, I have no authority, aka not a guru. I'm not a wildly successful entrepreneur that has started, bought, and or sold multiple companies. I don't own a Lamborghini, $1 million mansion, and I don't even have a mortgage. So I am not a guru. If you're here, it's because you requested access to an action plan worksheet I created, and some part of you wanted to learn more about how to get the most out of it. So I'll kick this off with a few minutes of housekeeping notes, and then I will dive right into the meat and potatoes of all of this stuff with the Trip.C worksheet, as I'm calling it. I'll explain why I call it Trip.C here in a second, in case you haven't already guessed. All right, housekeeping. So this is my first time teaching this content. As the slide deck indicates, it won't be pretty. I'm putting all of this together. I may stumble over some of my words as I talk about all of this stuff. But I do like to think that by this point, I've distilled it a good amount. I did a dry run just explaining the worksheet yesterday, and it took me an hour to get through this. So I think it'll go a little bit quicker now. Um, let's see, we got a new person. Cool. So most of this worksheet is an amalgamation of ideas that I learned from other people and then applied them to my own life. I'm going to do my best to cite sources appropriately, but I've been living with them for so long that I don't know exactly where everything came from. To add to that, it's not like I went and read a book or took a course and said, this is cool, I'm going to go reteach it. I've been implementing this stuff in my life for a while. So I'm not just like repackaging someone else's stuff. So to get the most out of this webinar is take notes, not just on things that you find helpful, but also questions of things that are kind of like left unanswered. Um, because there will be an opportunity for Q&A. I'll figure out a way to answer some of the questions that you do have. Let's see. All right. I will be moving very quickly through all of this material. So you might feel like you're taking a fire hose to the face with some of this. Like I said yesterday in the dry run, it took me an hour. And so I'm going to try to not do it in an hour so that I can actually have time to show you my work and you can have a real life example of how this worksheet can be applied and getting clarity of carving a path forward. So there will be an opportunity for Q&A, just not during the presentation, because if I answered every single question that came up when it came up, we would probably be here for the next 5 hours. And I'm sure all of you have things to do tonight, and I'm hungry and I want to get dinner. So all of the examples that I give for this are meant to illustrate the meaning and application of the different concepts and all that stuff, but they won't necessarily fit into a coherent, like bigger picture. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to do my best to give relevant and good examples, but some of it may be a little disjointed, I guess you could say. So just a disclaimer for that. So here is the format of the actual presentation. So first off, I'm going to introduce the concepts and where they came from. I'm going to go over the core elements used in the Trip.C worksheet, and I'm going to cover each of the core elements individually, and then I'll wrap it up with a nice little bow and summarize everything. And then I'm going to make an offer. You can take me up on the offer. You don't have to. It's going to be there. It doesn't require any sort of like financial monetary investment or anything like that. I'm not taking clients, but I just want to let you know that this is coming at the end of this. And then I'm going to show you my work. I'm going to pull out my worksheet. I'm going to pull out some spreadsheets and you'll understand why spreadsheets in a little bit. But I'm going to show you everything that I did so that hopefully when you look at it, you can say, oh, this makes so much more sense now. And also it gives you some ideas of what you can do in crafting your own path to get closer to having whatever it is that you want in life. Okay, So, introduction to the concepts. The majority of what I'm teaching, I learned from TGA, aka the Guardian Academy. Uh, some people here may be familiar with it, others not so much. A more majority of the teachings are influenced or directly created by people that are far more intelligent and successful than me. Some of those people are Dr. Jeff Spencer. He is a performance and productivity coach for all stars. Worked with the likes of Tiger Woods, Bono from U2, and was a coach for the was for Lance Armstrong when they was competing in Tour de France. Some of this was also influenced by Randy Massengale, who was a senior advisor to Bill Gates back in the 90s when they were really going through the big buildup with Microsoft. Dan Nicholson inspired a lot of this, and I pulled the Trip.C framework directly from him. He's an all-star CPA. He's created accounting standards for Fortune 500 companies, like off the charts, smart dude. Nick Peterson, he has started and sold multiple businesses. He's deep in the crypto sphere. People turn to him for launching new crypto projects. And overall, he's just a very powerful mind. So lots of really successful dudes. And the Trip.C framework, as I said, was directly influenced by Dan Nicholson. The reason I call it Trip.C is because there are three C's. So buckle your seatbelt. Let's go. The bigger picture. So the Trip.C worksheet is one piece of a much larger puzzle, and it is a stupid, simple process to build a truly meaningful life. So you'll see in this flowchart, there's a green box and there is a blue box. So the green box is oriented towards planning. The blue box is more oriented towards implementation. And where they intersect is a little bit of both. This worksheet covers both of those areas. I'm not going to explain this whole thing right now because that would take a couple hours in and of itself. So what the worksheet is one piece of a much larger system. But I just wanted to let you know that this doesn't exist off in like Never Never Land. It's a part of something bigger. So before I dive into all of the Trip.C stuff, I want to talk about the perfect system. So, W. Edwards Deming was an engineer, and one of his most famous quotes is every system is perfectly designed to get the results it gets. In other words, my words, I suppose you could say, no outcome is a mistake. It is the inevitable result of a complex system of cause and consequence. In some cases, a system with boundaries that exceed perception of unity. Or, in other words, the connections within a system exceed our perception to the point that things that are connected, we now may not be able to identify as being connected. Like the McDonald's quarter pounder with cheese. So, let's do an analogy here. There is a whole system that takes the quarter pounder with cheese from nothing to being a burger that you get to shove in your face. Okay. There's all of the food, all of the raw materials producers, right? They've got cows for the beef, producing potatoes for the fries, vegetables, and then they got to package all of that stuff, send it off to a food processing plant. Then after they process it, they repackage it and they send it to the restaurants. They freeze it, they unfreeze it, they cook it. The workers go and they assemble the food and then they wrap it in a thing, put it in a bag, and then congratulations, you have cheeseburger. So there's a whole system, the whole like convoluted, complex system that takes nothing and turns it into a hamburger, right? Your life is the same way. Your life is a complex system. It is a perfect system that is designed to give you the life experience that you have, okay? So what that also means is that if you don't have something, but you want it, the only thing you have to do is make modifications to the perfect system, which is your life that is delivering what you have. Thus enters the Trip.C framework. Okay. So what is it all about? It is about building a perfect system engineered for success, right? Because we're talking about getting what you want, and not just leaving it up to hopes and dreams, but actually engineering an outcome. And this is about doing the right things in the right order, right? We're talking about systems. And this is about optimizing for achievement, not speed. This is really, really important. because you can, like, if you're presented with the choice between getting what you want and going nowhere really, really fast, which would you choose? Getting what you want, I would hope. I know I personally do not like going anywhere fast. And that's why we optimize for achievement, because if you optimize for speed, you may end up blowing up, burning out, or going off in some random direction that doesn't even take you towards getting what you want, right? So we're optimizing for achievement. So this is the three C's of the Trip.C framework. The reason I call it Trip.C is because triple C, there's three C's. So Trip.C is just easier to say. Clarity, aka being crystal clear about what you want. Certainty, which is making sure you accomplish the objective. And collapsing time or creating options, aka make it bigger, better, faster, easier, or more enjoyable, or any combination of all of those. I typically do not recommend anybody spend too much time looking at collapsing time and creating options, and I'll get into that more in a little bit. And the majority of what we're going to be looking at is clarity and certainty, because if you don't have those things dialed in, then collapsing time really, really doesn't matter. And I'll probably say this again, but one of the big things with clarity and being clear about what you want isn't just being clear about what you want, it's also about being clear of what it looks like, right? You know, somebody can say, I want to be rich. Okay, well, rich in what? Do you want to be rich in money? Do you want to be rich in relationships? Do you want to be rich in life experiences? Right? Like you can say, I want to be rich in money. But what does rich in money actually mean? Does it mean you have a Lamborghini and a mansion? Does it mean that you own your house and your car outright and that you have enough money in investments that you can live off your dividends and you don't have to work? Does it mean you have 5,000 or $500,000 cash in the bank so that you don't have to worry about anything? I mean, I don't know. What does it actually look like? So that's a really important thing with being clear is not just about what you want, but what it actually looks like. So clarity is important because you can't get you what you want if you don't even know what it actually looks like. Okay. If I'm thirsty and I want to drink, and the thing that's going to quench my thirst is a bottle of water, and I don't know what a bottle of water looks like, if one of those is like right in front of my face, I wouldn't even know that I have what I want because I don't know what it looks like, right? Got to know what it looks like. Certainty is important because you can't be sure that you'll get what you want unless you know you're on the right path and stay on it, right? You don't want to wander off. You want to make sure that you're on a path, you're on the right path, and that you stay on the path so that you can actually get what you want. And collapsing time and creating options is important because it's not. In my opinion, it's extra credit, it's a bonus. As long as you get what you want, as long as you achieve the objective, that's the most important thing. If you get it faster or it becomes easier or it's a bigger version of whatever it is, cool, awesome, bonus points. But again, the emphasis here is simply just getting what you want, whatever it is. So collapsing time, it's important, but it's not. What's more important is having clarity and certainty that you're actually going to get what you want in life, right? Whatever that may be. It's different for everyone. Okay, core concepts, prompts, and conceptual vocab. So each section of the worksheet has some questions or statements that are meant to stimulate thought about what actually has to happen. And there are no right or wrong answers with this. There's no specific way to answer any of the questions. So, for example, what do I want to say at the end of all of this? Well, it could be three words. It could be five words. It could be a whole paragraph, right? You could just be, I fucking did it. Cool. Like, if that's what you have to say that lets you know that you accomplished it, right? I finally own my own house. This is amazing, right? It could be something like that. I can't believe I went bungee jumping. This is so crazy, right? Whatever. What's the thing that you get to say at the end of all of it? There's no right way to answer that question, and there's no wrong way. And that's true of any of the other prompts in the worksheet. There's no right or wrong way to do it. Conceptual vocab. So all of the prompts in templating use what I call conceptual vocabulary. And the reason I call it conceptual vocabulary is because it's one or two words that are meant to indicate an entire packaged concept, right? So, for example, bumpers is, in a nutshell, keep bad things from happening. But there's a whole concept and framework around bumpers. So when I just put that one word in there, it's meant to push someone to think about that within the context of what they want. But one of the reasons why I'm doing this is that if you don't know what all of that conceptual vocab is, then you're kind of like, okay, wait, what do I do here? So I'll be explaining all of the conceptual vocab in each section, like piece by piece. Okay. How do I go to the next slide? There we go. Okay, so important note on all of this. Everything is subject to change. The worksheet is meant to be a jumping off point. So as you implement the plan and collect data, you can return to the worksheet, reevaluate, modify, pivot, or otherwise change the path toward getting what you want. Or you can abandon the plan entirely because you changed your mind and decided you don't even want it anymore. That's okay. It's happened to me in the past. I had a plan. I started doing the thing and I collected data and I was like, I don't even want to do this anymore. And so I like moved on to the next thing. There's nothing wrong with that. And that's really just important to keep in mind is that this is very much process oriented, and it's not like a set it and forget it type of thing. It's meant to be a jumping off point, but also an anchor that holds you to almost a form of accountability. More on that to come, but a form of accountability of making sure that you're doing the things that you need to do with clarity that it's actually going to take you to what you want. Okay, so the first C, clarity. Be crystal clear about what you want. So the first parts of this is the main objective. What do you want? It's pretty straightforward, or so it would seem. Now, this is also predicated on the assumption that you've done some of your own work within your own value priorities to know what actually matters to you and what you actually find important, so that when you identify the objective of what it is that you actually want, it's something that you actually want, not something that you think you should want or somebody else tells you that you should want or something somebody else wants for you. It's something that you can own for yourself and say, I really do want this, right? So that's kind of some of the work that comes before this worksheet. So assuming that you've done that work, then identifying the objective should be pretty easy. If you haven't done that work yet, then identifying an objective may be a little bit challenging, or you may have to do a little bit more thought to figure out exactly what that is. So one of the other prompts already kind of went over this. What do I want to say at the end of all of this? Right? It's the statement that lets you know that you've arrived. Again, pretty straightforward. The other ones, which are a little bit more elusive, is what is the current position and what are the things that have to go right? Excuse me while I take a drink of water. Okay. What's your position relative to the outcome? So, the whole point of this prompt is to help you identify the specific gaps that exist between you and getting what you want, whatever that thing is, right? So, for example, someone wants to go on vacation. The final position is they need $12,000, right? They want to go stay in Spain for 3 weeks, and so they have to have $12,000 to go take that vacation. Current position is they have $0 allocated for vacation. That's the gap, right? So that's the whole point with the position relative to the outcome. You say this is the final position that I know I need to be in, and this is my current position relative to that. Or final position is I need $12,000 cash for the vacation. I currently have $5,000 for it, right? That's a position relative to the outcome. And you'll do this, and again, this is like brainstorming, depends on what it is that you're looking to accomplish, but you'll have to think, just take some critical thought to figure out all of the indicators that you've actually, you're thinking for. It's like all the indicators that once all the boxes are checked, that's what it looks like. And then figuring out where you are relative to that, like you're backing into the solution. Okay. What are the things that must go right? So, this is typically the things that must go right in order for you to get what you want. It's some sort of task or mini objective. I generally don't like using the word goals too. They seem a little bit too lofty and vague for me. I like objective just because for me it indicates some sort of purpose or intention. And so I tend to gravitate towards the word objective. Feels more mission oriented, and just gives me a deeper sense of purpose. Some would say I'm arguing semantics, but that's neither here nor there. At any rate, there are many tasks, many objectives that are meant to bridge the gap that exists between your current and final position in the whatever it is that you're looking to achieve. Side note for that, how concrete the task is depends on your position and how much data you have. More on that in a second. So typically, what the things that must go right look like is in the form of acquiring a resource, removing some sort of constraint, or learning a skill. Now, removing constraints and acquiring resources kind of go hand in hand, especially if you think about money, right? The constraint is I don't have enough money, so I need to acquire money, right? So those two typically go hand in hand, but not necessarily. For example, if you want to go take a 3 week vacation by yourself, but you have crippling social anxiety and you get a panic attack every time you leave the house, well, it's going to be really hard to go do a 3 week vacation in a different country. So, one of the constraints that would have to be removed is social anxiety. So, maybe go to therapy for that or whatever. That's that. But at any rate, those are the types of things that we're looking at. It's like, what are the things, what are the hindrances that will get in the way of us doing the thing that we want to do or having what we want to have? What are the resources that are required? And do we have those or not? If we don't have the resources, like if you want to take on a new hobby or a new skill, uh, and you're working 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, well, you probably don't have a lot of time or attention for that. So it's like, okay, now we need to acquire the resources of time and attention so that they can be reallocated towards, you know, having a new hobby or developing a new skill, whatever, right? You want to go traveling, but you need to know the language of the country, right? You got to learn the foreign skill or learn a foreign language. That's the skill. So some examples, things that have to go right. And it all revolves around acquiring resources, removing constraints, or learning skills. And an example, even though I just gave a bunch of them, acquiring funding for a vacation versus saving $1,000 out of each paycheck. So this taps into what I was talking about with how concrete the mini objective is, right? If you have to save $12,000, but you don't know exactly how you're going to do that, or you don't have any data that supports how much money you can put away, then the thing that must go right is you have to acquire funding for the vacation. Maybe you don't know exactly how yet when working through this section, but that's the thing that has to go right. You have to acquire the funding versus if you are budgeted down to the penny every single month, you know exactly how much money is coming in and going out, and you know that you have $1,000 that you can set aside for vacation. Cool, great. That's the one thing that has to go right. You just have to save $1,000 of each paycheck for vacation. Again, what has to go right, how concrete the task is, depends on the data that you have to support the activity or the task, right? Okay, moving on. Okay, the ideal baseline. This one's pretty important and it does take a little bit of thought. And the ideal baseline is meant to paint a picture of a set of circumstances and activities and processes that, if realized, if put into practice, it would yield the desired outcome, right? Or you're putting together that situation. Now, it's not a best case scenario in the sense that this is the best thing that could possibly happen. We're looking for a minimum viable system that, so long as the bare minimum of XYZ happens, then I'll get what I want. We're not looking for best case scenario. We're looking for minimum viable system. The reason for this is because you can always optimize a minimum viable system, but if you try to start with the maximum of everything, then you're going to be put in a position where you run the risk of just like breaking something or blowing something up. For example, uh, you decide you're going to save, every last cent of your paycheck, but now you don't have money to pay for rent, right? You're maximizing versus optimizing, right? Because you're leaving yourself short. So, uh, and do yourself a favor and be considerate of your time horizons. If somebody is a burger flipper at McDonald's, they're probably not going to be able to save $12,000 to go on vacation next month. It's like I mean, is it possible that a person somewhere in space and time could do that? Yes, but the average probability is incredibly unlikely. So just be considerate that you're actually putting realistic time horizons on your endeavors. And also, we're looking for base hits, not a home run derby. Like I'm sure you're like catching a pattern here. Quick, like easy wins, not necessarily quick wins, but like reliable wins, consistent wins, things that are able to be repeated versus hitting home runs repeatedly. That's not what we're going for. We want repeatable, we want reliable, we want consistent. We want the least amount of effort and the least amount of risk. That's what the baseline is about because you can always optimize or improve the baseline and do things better. But again, we're optimizing for achievability. What's the minimum amount of stuff that we have to do in order to get what we want? And then if we improve that over time, awesome, but we want to make sure that we're actually getting what I want. So, what does the ideal baseline look like? Well, so long as I'm able to save $1,000 per month for the next 12 months, use a Learn Spanish app for 10 minutes a day, and work and find a work remote job, then in 15 months, I'll be able to backpack across Spain for 3 weeks, right? That's the ideal baseline, right? Now, if there comes an opportunity if there comes an opportunity for you to save more than 1K per month for whatever reason, maybe you have a windfall, or you decide, or you end up not having to find a remote work job because you have 3 months of vacation accumulated at a W-2 job, great. You can look at it that way. But again, the idea is to look for the ideal baseline minimum viable system that so long as it's followed, it will take you to getting what you want. There we go. Okay. Next part of this, the second C, is certainty, which is making sure that you accomplish the objective, right? Um, and it's to make sure that you're on the right path and you stay on the right path. Okay, so the first part of certainty is deciding what you're going to do. It's meant to aid in determining a clear direction of things to do that close the gap between you and getting what you want, right? So in this step with the worksheet, it's going to involve either action steps, game plans, or bumpers. So the action step is one single thing that you have to do, right? Just one single action step that will close the gap in any particular task, right? And I'll give some examples here in a second. The game plan would be a series or collection of actions that you could take. The reason I say series or collection is because a series would imply that one thing happens before the next, and then after that, then something else, and then something else. Versus a collection of actions, there's no specific order in which they have to happen, but they do all have to happen. Then bumpers is essentially keeping bad things from happening, right? How do you make sure that you don't blow up, you don't wander off track, you don't get stuck in the process, or you don't start backtracking or regressing and getting further away from having what you want? So I'm going to stick with this vacation analogy or this vacation scenario, right? Let's say that the task that we're working on, so we went through the clarity part of this. What are the things that have to go right? One of the tasks is that we have to save money or we have to acquire funding. So Aside from the actual like producing of the money, uh, one multifaceted solution or action step, and this is a combination of bumpers, game plan, and action step. So the 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 risk that a person could run in saving up money for vacation is that they put it all in a savings account, but then some shiny object catches their eye, and then they start spending the money that they were saving for vacation on something else that is not their vacation. And so every time that they buy something that's not for their vacation, using their vacation money, they're actually taking themselves further away from having what they want. So one of the bumpers, right? How do we keep bad things from happening? Is locking up the money that is meant to be saved for the vacation. So one way of doing that, if you know the vacation is going to be 18 months down the road, month one, you can take the money instead of throwing it into a savings account, you open it up with a certificate of deposit, right? Because then you're locking up the money and you can't get it out without penalty until the maturity date of the certificate of deposit. Not only that, it's going to be worth the money that you're saving is going to be worth more than it was when you started, right? So it's at any rate, so you're locking up the money so that you don't spend it on something else. The action step would, or the game plan would be, every time that I get paid, I'm going to take $1,000 and I'm going to put it into the different savings account. And then when I have a free day, I'm going to go into the bank and take that money from the savings account and get a certificate of deposit, right? So that's game plan bumpers. It's a multifaceted solution for making sure that you stay on track with one of the tasks. So, quick nod of heads. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. Cool. That was a. I just wanted to check on that one. But yeah, so that's the whole with certainty and deciding what you're going to do. It's action steps, game plans, bumpers, right? What are the things to do? How do we keep bad things from happening? And actually deciding what those action steps and what it looks like. Uh, okay. And this is really important with evaluating efficacy, right? Or rather, how do you know that it's actually working, right? Because you can craft a plan. You can say, this is all of this stuff. This is what I'm going to do. And then you go off and do it. But if it's not working, you don't want to keep doing it, right? You're going to have to do something else. But you have to have means to like figure out if what you're doing is actually working, if it's actually taking you closer to having what you want, right? So this section with evaluating efficacy is all about accountability and keeping you on track and getting progressively closer to accomplishing the objective or the task, whatever, however you want to look at it. So, with tracking the measurement, this is accountability in progress, right? Are you doing the things that you're supposed to be doing when you're supposed to be doing them, right? If you say I have to save $1,000 every month with my paycheck, am I actually doing that? Like you have to track that. And so it could be something as simple as just like a notebook, like a page in a notebook where you just like check mark every note. You could have a spreadsheet for it. I have more spreadsheets than I like to admit for all sorts of things. But that's what the tracking and measurement is to make sure that you're actually doing the things that you're supposed to be doing. You're doing what you said you were going to do when you said you were going to do it, right? Because if you're not doing what you said you were going to do when you said you were going to do it, you're obviously not on track. And if you're not on track, you're not going to get what you want, right? Uh, so the long to go along with this, we've also got benchmarks and milestones, which are pretty self-explanatory. There's significant markers that you are getting noticeably closer. So if you were saving $15,000 for vacation, I just got my first $5,000 saved, right? Or I just bought the plane ticket, or I just booked the series of Airbnbs, whatever it is, right? There's benchmarks and milestones to let you know that everything's on track for you to do whatever it is that you're supposed to be doing. And then behavior and decision making is a little bit elusive, mostly because people like to lie to themselves. and I'm not going to get too deep in the down the behavior and decision making rabbit hole, but ultimately the behavior and decision making and the way it relates to evaluating efficacy is figuring out if your behavior and the way you make decisions actually aligns with your objective, right? Because if your behavior is counterpoint to what it is that you say you want, then you're driving with your foot on the brake. Like you're working against yourself. So it's really an important thing to pay attention to. In like an example of this, again, you're trying to save money for vacation and you put away $1,000 once a month and you're 6 months into it, and then you see some shiny object, you're like, oh, you know what? I'm going to go take a day trip to this place over here, right? I'm going to do a weekend stay at a national park or something like that. There's nothing wrong with that. You can do that. But what that's indicating is that your behavior isn't aligning with the ultimate objective, which is going on this big vacation down the road. Now, one thing I will say is that it doesn't mean that you can't do both. It just means you have to reevaluate the approach that you're taking because if a person were to find themselves in the pattern of pulling out money from their big vacation fund for smaller vacations, what might make more sense is to change the way that they're allocating their savings, right? They're going to say, I'm going to put this money away. I'm going to put X number of dollars away for small vacations in the short term. And I'm going to put X number of dollars away for vacations in the long term, right? So they're reevaluating or they're modifying the structure of the plan and what they're going to do so that it more closely aligns with their behavior their decision making. In the same token, they realize, oh, I'm spending all my money on these smaller vacations. It's taking me further away from my big one. I need to stop taking these small trips so I can finally go do the big one that I want to do, right? Um, because again, if your behavior and decision making doesn't align with your objective, then what you're doing isn't working by definition. It's not working. Because if it was working, your behavior and decision making would align. So I don't know another way to say that. Okay, collapsing time and creating options. Bigger, better, faster, easier, more enjoyable. Um, I don't have a whole lot for this, mostly because this is like the bonus points. Because when you are creating options collapsing time, it's based on the components that exist in the minimum viable system, as I call it, that's generated to accomplish whatever objective it is that you're looking to accomplish, right? And so you're looking at what opportunities exist, if any, because there may not be opportunities. But you're looking at opportunities that exist that could be scaled without adding a bunch of shit to the system. The reason for that is that if you start adding a whole bunch of shit to a reliable system, it then becomes unreliable. And then once something becomes unreliable, it decreases the likelihood that you're actually going to get what you want, right? So we don't want to add a whole bunch of shit to the system. We're just looking at different ways that we could enhance what's already working. But there may not be any sort of opportunities to scale anything. It depends. Okay. But I do say I caution anybody to not bank on collapsing time after getting through clarity and certainty because it puts you at risk of trying to do things faster. And if you try to go too fast, then you run the risk of missing signs of what's not working or what isn't, or just breaking something. Like I've seen other people do this. I've been guilty of this. The first time I see an indicator that something is working, I start throwing fuel on the fire, and then something blows up in my face. I mean, I'm sure everybody's done that at one point or another. They find something, it's like, oh, this is working. Let me do more of it, and then they burn out and they stop doing it, right? So don't bank on collapsing time, and don't blow yourself up, right? Focus on clarity, focus on certainty, focus on getting what you want. That's the most important part. Okay, so let's wrap things up with a pretty little bow. I know this has been like a fire hose to the face. I feel like I've been Uh, I feel like I need to breathe for a second. There's been a lot of stuff. As I was putting this together, as I was putting all this, I was like, how am I supposed to explain all of this? Uh, and pulling it out of my head, it's like, how am I going to try to make sense of all of this? So here we are. Let's summarize all of this. So the Trip.C worksheet is designed to aid in building a system that's engineered to deliver the outcome you want. It's designed to give you what you want. So by starting with true clarity of what you want and what it looks like, you're able to make more informed decisions about what actually has to happen, right? By having more clarity about what you want, you get a better idea of what has to happen. By having a better sense of what actually has to happen, you're able to create a baseline scenario that will deliver what you want. By having a baseline scenario, you're able to make more informed decisions of which actions to take, increasing certainty that you will get what you want, right? It flows in this direction for a purpose. And ultimately, this is the perfect system. And I'm going to bring it back to the perfect system. Once you have a plan, you have a success system unique to you and what you want. All of the information that you provide in the different sections of the worksheet are variables of a minimum viable success system, right? All of the um, single actions, game plans, um, anything with um, man, I just had a brain fart. Anything with acquire resources, removing constraints, measurement systems, adding bumpers, all that stuff. They're all variables in the system. Now, the thing about systems is that they can be refined and they can be optimized. So this means that regardless where you start, however imperfect it may be, that's two words, not one. As long as you implement the plan, you track and measure progress, you evaluate the data, and refine the system, getting what you want becomes like borderline inevitable, right? And I'm going to go a little bit out. I was going to talk about this, but I think it's relevant to say. So by trade, I'm a sound engineer. So I work on very large audio systems, and so I'm used to systems engineering in a certain regard. Everything flows from one place to another, and there's a million different places where the signal can get broken up. From the second that the singer's voice goes into a microphone, all the way up until the point when it leaves the speaker, right? All there's all of these different parts of the system, and once once I learned to understand an audio system as its whole, then it became very easy to troubleshoot where is the break in the system, right? Where is the thing that's not working? Right? What's the one thing that's keeping everything else from working? You fix that one thing, and then everything starts to flow, right? It's the same with getting what you want, right? You take all of the pieces that have to be in place, and then you just kind of like tweak them until they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, the way that they're supposed to be doing it. And then once they all line up, then it's cranking and it's just going to go and it's going to work. But it's all dependent on actually having a starting place, doing the things, seeing what happens when you do the thing, and then evaluating the data, right? When I do this, this other thing happens. Is that helping me? Yes, cool. I'm doing the right thing. You track it, you measure it, you evaluate the data, you iterate, and you refine the system until you're perfectly positioned to get what you want. Now, if you have a perfectly refined and optimized system, that's when you can look at maximizing, and that's the collapsing time and creating options. But it's the the most important thing is getting in the habit of creating plans, following them, and then evaluating the data after you start implementing. So that's all I'm gonna Forrest Gump. That's all I got to say about that with a perfect system. Okay, the offer. One of the things that I'm going to make available to y'all is a workshop where we'll actually sit down. It's not just going to be Q&A of like, what does this shit mean? It's going to be more of a hands-on, hey, David, I'm working on this. Let's brainstorm, or, even all of us as a group. It's like working through some of the goals that you have for 2025 and start plugging stuff into the worksheet in kind of a group format. Uh, Now, what makes it special for all of y'all is that I'm capping this at 5 people. Only 5 people get to come to this. So if you're on this call, you get priority access. You get a front of the line pass. Like you did the work, you showed up, you came here, you engaged. So you get a front of the line pass. And there are one, two, three, four. There's 5 of you on this call, and I'm capping it at 5. So if all of you decide you want to come to the workshop, nobody else gets to come. So that's the offer, and I'll make something special about it for y'all too, because you actually showed up. So that's the offer. Um, Now the fun part. I'm kind of scared for this. Let me show you my work. I'm going to show you my work because there's a lot of it. Let me stop sharing this.